What if the one person everyone overlooks is the only one who can save them all? What if the quietest voice in the room carries the weight of 100 battles? In the sterile, fluorescent-lit world of high-stakes military briefings, power is measured in polished brass and rows of ribbons. Men with steel in their eyes and maps of old wars etched into their faces decide the fate of nations. And in the corner of one such room, cleaning a precision rifle with the meticulous, almost reverent care of a watchmaker, was Specialist Anya Sharma. To the decorated officers of SEAL Team 6, she was just part of the architecture, a logistics clerk, an armorer, a ghost in camouflage fatigues whose job was to ensure their tools were perfect. She was invisible, and that was how she wanted it. The air in the command tent was thick with tension and stale coffee. Colonel Marcus Thorne, a man whose face was a roadmap of scars and whose reputation was forged in the fires of a dozen forgotten conflicts, pointed a finger at a satellite image projected on the screen. "The target is here," he growled, his voice like gravel grinding stone. Codename, Cerberus. Fortified in the Zargos Mountains. Our last 2 attempts at reconnaissance went dark. We are blind, and he knows it. The room was a sea of grim faces. This was an impossible mission, a suicide run into the heart of a viper's nest. Admiral Vance, a career politician in a warrior's uniform, tried to inject some levity, a foolish move in a room full of men preparing to meet their maker. His gaze swept the room and landed on Sharma, still silently working on the rifle, her back to them. "Well, if our best men can't get it done," he boomed, a smirk playing on his lips, "maybe we should send in the armory clerk." "What's your kill count, Specialist?" A few nervous, sycophantic chuckles rippled through the officers. It was a joke meant to break the tension, a casual dismissal of the woman in the corner. Sharma didn't stop her work. The soft, rhythmic sound of oiled cloth on steel was the only reply for a long moment. She reassembled the bolt carrier group with a seamless, fluid motion that was less mechanical and more instinctual. Then, without turning, her voice cut through the silence. It was low, devoid of emotion, yet it landed with the force of a hammer blow. 312, sir. The chuckles died instantly, choked in their throats. The air in the tent seemed to crystallize, freezing every man in place. Colonel Thorne's head snapped towards her. Admiral Vance's smile vanished, replaced by a slack-jawed stare. Sharma finally turned. Her eyes, a deep, stormy gray, held no pride, no anger, only a profound and unsettling emptiness, the look of someone who had stared into the abyss and found it staring back. She met the Admiral's shocked gaze. "Confirmed," she added, her voice a ghost of a whisper that echoed louder than any shout. But that was with the VDV. A new silence descended, this one heavier, laced with dawning comprehension and a touch of fear. VDV, the Russian airborne troops. Spetsnaz. The boogeymen of 100 intelligence reports. The officers exchanged stunned, disbelieving glances. The janitor, the armory clerk, the invisible woman in the corner, had just claimed a combat record that would make her a legend in any special forces unit on the planet. Colonel Thorne was the first to move. He stepped away from the briefing table, his eyes never leaving Sharma. He saw it then, the subtle, coiled stillness in her posture, the hyper-awareness in her peripheral gaze, the way she held the rifle not like a tool, but like an extension of her own body. He had spent a lifetime reading men, and he knew he was looking at a predator hiding in plain sight. "My office," he commanded, his voice tight. Now, as Anya followed him out, the frozen tableau of officers finally broke, erupting into a storm of hushed, incredulous whispers. The mission, the target, the impossible odds, all were momentarily forgotten, eclipsed by the earth-shattering revelation from the one person they had never even seen. In the harsh quiet of Thorne's Spartan office, the truth unspooled. Her file was thin, a carefully constructed fiction. Anya Sharma, U.S. Army Logistics Specialist. Before that, nothing. A ghost. But Thorne didn't need a file, he had his instincts. He sat opposite her, the scarred oak of his desk a no-man's land between them. The VDV doesn't just let people walk away, he stated, not a question but a challenge. Anya's gaze was fixed on a point somewhere beyond the canvas walls of the tent, a place only she could see. They didn't, she said softly. They buried Elena Voronina. They held a state funeral for a hero of the Republic. They gave her parents a medal and an empty, sealed casket, Elena Voronina. The ghost of Grozny. A name Thorne had only heard in classified intelligence briefings, a near-mythical sniper credited with halting an entire armored column single-handedly. A ghost who had vanished without a trace 5 years ago. Why? Thorne asked, his voice softer now, less commander and more confident. Why leave? Why this? He gestured vaguely, encompassing the low-status uniform, the menial work, the self-imposed exile. Anya's mask of stoicism finally cracked. A single tear traced a path through the faint layer of dust and grease on her cheek. They killed my husband. My daughter. A car bomb meant for me. A message from Cerberus himself. He knew my name. He knew where I lived. My own command marked them as acceptable losses. The hero was more valuable than her family, the confession hung in the air, heavy and raw. Her penance was not just hiding, but forgetting. She had traded the sniper scope for a cleaning rod, the battlefield for the armory, the identity of a killer for the anonymity of a nobody. She was punishing herself. Thorne leaned forward, his hands clasped on the desk. He saw not a broken soldier, but a weapon left to rust, a warrior consumed by grief. And he saw an opportunity. Cerberus is the man we're hunting, he said, the pieces clicking into place. The intelligence I have says he's the one who masterminded the attack that changed your life. Anya's head snapped up, the emptiness in her eyes replaced by a burning, incandescent flicker of rage. For the first time, Elena Voronina looked out from behind Anya Sharma's face. I know, she whispered. Thorne saw his opening. It was a monstrous gamble, throwing an unknown, psychologically wounded operative into the most critical mission of his career. But his gut, the instinct that had kept him alive for 30 years, screamed at him that she was the only one who could do it. My best snipers can't get within 10 clicks of that fortress. The terrain, the surveillance, it's a meat grinder. But you were trained in those same mountains. You know his tactics. He stood and walked to the wall map, his back to her. I'm not asking you to be a hero, Voronina. I'm not asking you to save the world. I'm asking you if the ghost wants her revenge. Anya stood, her movement stiff, as if waking from a long slumber. She walked to the desk and picked up a pen, her hand steady. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her eyes, now clear and cold as a winter sky, said everything. The ghost was back. And she was going hunting. The transition was brutal. One day, Anya Sharma was a ghost in the armory, the next, she was thrust into the elite, testosterone-fueled crucible of Spectre Cell. The men, Thorne's hand-picked operators, regarded her with a mixture of suspicion, resentment, and outright hostility. To them, she was the colonel's pet project, an outsider, a woman who had leapfrogged the chain of command based on a cryptic, unbelievable story. Major Evans, Thorne's ambitious and politically savvy second-in-command, was the most vocal opponent. He saw Anya not just as an unqualified interloper but as a direct threat to his own ascent. Sir, with all due respect, Evans argued in a heated exchange with Thorne, she's a logistics clerk. She hasn't seen combat in 5 years. You're putting the lives of my men in the hands of a ghost story. Thorne's gaze was like ice. That ghost story has more confirmed kills than your entire platoon, Major. She's on the team. Make it work. Evans made it work by making Anya's life a living hell. He pushed her harder on the training ranges, assigned her the worst duties, and took every opportunity to undermine her in front of the squad. Can't keep up, Sharma? Maybe the armory is more your speed. The men followed his lead, their professional respect for Thorn warring with their ingrained skepticism. They gave her the silent treatment, closed ranks, and waited for her to fail. Only one man showed a flicker of curiosity, Sergeant Deacon Miles, the team's senior medic. A grizzled veteran with kind eyes and hands calloused from holding men together as they bled out, Deacon was the soul of the unit. He didn't trust Anya, but he trusted Thorn's judgment. He watched her. He saw how she moved, with an economy of motion that spoke of years of brutal conditioning. He saw how she handled her rifle, not like a soldier, but like a concert violinist holding a Stradivarius. He saw the way she studied the terrain on their marches, her eyes constantly scanning for threats, calculating angles, identifying kill zones. This was not a clerk. During a live-fire simulation in a mock village, Evans deliberately fed Anya faulty intel, sending her into a building rigged with flashbangs. The disorienting blast was meant to humiliate her, to prove she couldn't handle the pressure. As the team stormed in, expecting to find her dazed and useless, they found her instead pressed against a wall, weapon ready, her eyes already readjusted. She had anticipated the trap. But the simulation went sideways. A rookie, spooked by the chaos, stumbled into the line of fire of a pop-up target. Deacon moved to shove him clear, exposing himself. Before anyone could react, 2 rounds from Anya's rifle, fired in a single, impossibly fast burst, neutralized the target just centimeters from Deacon's head. The thwack-thwack of the rounds hitting the steel plate echoed in the stunned silence. Deacon stared at Anya, his heart hammering in his chest. She hadn't aimed. She had simply reacted, her weapon an extension of her will. He saw no triumph in her eyes, only the cold, hard focus of a professional. Later that night, as Anya cleaned her rifle alone, Deacon approached, holding out a steaming mug. "Coffee," he said gruffly. She took it, her nod a silent thanks. "You didn't flinch," Deacon said, sitting beside her. "In the village. Most people would." Anya shrugged, her eyes on her work. "Flinching gets you killed." "Evans set you up," he stated. It wasn't a question. "Rank has its privileges," she replied, her voice flat. "He thinks you're a threat," Deacon continued, studying her profile. "He's not wrong," Anya said, finally looking at him. But not to him. An understanding passed between them. Deacon saw the warrior she was, and she saw the ally he could be. From that day on, the ice began to thaw. Deacon started talking to her, sharing stories about the men, about Thorn, about the missions that had made them a family. He told her how Thorn had lost his own son in an IED attack years ago, a loss that had walled him off from everyone. "He sees something in you," Deacon mused. Maybe the same fire he lost. Anya began to feel the first cracks in her self-imposed isolation. These men, this unit, they were becoming more than just a means to an end. They were becoming a cause. The final test came a week before deployment. A long-range marksmanship trial in high-wind conditions. The target was a small metal plate, 2,000 meters away, a nearly impossible shot. One by one, Spectre Cell's top snipers tried and failed, the wind pushing their rounds wide. Evans smirked from the sidelines. "Guess some shots are just impossible, Colonel." Thorn turned to Anya. "Sharma. Your turn." She lay prone, her movements fluid and unhurried. She didn't use the advanced wind gauges or ballistic computers the others relied on. She simply watched the grass sway, felt the air on her cheek, and closed her eyes for a moment, as if listening to the mountain itself. She adjusted her scope, her breathing slowing until it was barely perceptible. One breath in. A long, slow breath out. The rifle cracked, a single, sharp report that echoed through the valley. Seconds later, a faint ping returned. A perfect center hit. Evans's jaw dropped. The rest of the team stared in disbelief. Anya chambered another round. Crack. Ping. Another hit, right next to the first. She wasn't just hitting the target, she was painting a masterpiece. In that moment, the skepticism of Spectre Cell shattered. They weren't looking at a clerk anymore. They were looking at a legend. Thorn walked over and knelt beside her. "Welcome to the team, Specialist," he said, his voice laced with a rare, quiet pride. Anya looked up from her scope, and for the first time since she had arrived, a flicker of something other than pain crossed her face. It was the faint, fragile light of belonging. The infiltration was a whisper. Spectre Cell moved like wraiths through the jagged peaks of the Zargos Mountains, the cold air burning their lungs. Anya was detached, a spectre in her own element, her purpose narrowed to a single point, the man in the fortress. Cerberus. From her overwatch position, a rocky outcrop she called her nest, she had a commanding view of the compound below. The world became a circle of magnified clarity through her scope. She was patient. She was stone. Down below, Thorn led the assault team towards the perimeter. "All stations, check in," Thorn's voice crackled in her ear, a low rasp of static. "Spectre 1, in position," Spectre 2, set, the calls came in, a steady rhythm of readiness. But something felt wrong. A cold knot of dread tightened in Anya's stomach. The compound was too quiet. The patrol routes were too predictable. It was a textbook layout, a caricature of a fortress. It was a trap. "Colonel," she whispered into her comms, her voice urgent. "Something's not right. This is too easy." "Pull back, negative, Ghost," Thorn replied, using the call sign he had given her. "We're on schedule. Evans has confirmed intel. The target is vulnerable, but the intel was a lie." As the team breached the outer wall, the world erupted. Searchlights blazed to life, pinning them in a crisscross of blinding white. Machine gun nests, hidden in the rock face, opened up, their muzzle flashes stitching lines of death across the kill zone. It was a perfectly executed ambush. "Contact! Contact!" The comms exploded in a cacophony of shouts and gunfire. Men screamed. Men died. Pinned down, with no cover, Spectre Cell was being systematically slaughtered. Major Evans's voice came over the command channel from the safety of the distant operations center, laced with a false, theatrical panic. "Spectre Lead, you've walked into a hornet's nest. I can't get air support to you, the anti-air is too heavy. I'm recommending you fall back." Thorn, taking cover behind a rock as bullets chipped away at his only protection, knew. He knew with sickening certainty. Evans hadn't been wrong, he had been complicit. This was a betrayal. "Ghost, we're compromised," he yelled into his mic, "we need an exit. Light them up." Anya didn't need to be told. The chaos below had already focused her into a state of pure, lethal clarity. The grief, the fear, the years of self-pity, it all burned away, leaving only the cold fire of the warrior she was born to be. Her rifle became a part of her. Breath. Squeeze. Recoil. A sentry in a tower crumpled. 313. Breath. Squeeze. Recoil. A machine gunner fell silent. 314. She was no longer just Anya or Elena. She was an instrument of vengeance, a force of nature. Her movements were a brutal, efficient ballet of death. She acquired targets, calculated wind and drop, and dispatched them with chilling precision. She was holding back an army, a single, solitary guardian angel raining hellfire from above. Down in the kill zone, Deacon dragged a wounded soldier to safety, a river of red soaking his fatigues. "We can't hold," he shouted. Just then, a new voice cut through the comms, a voice that turned Anya's blood to ice. It was Cerberus himself, his voice calm, arrogant, broadcasting on an open channel for all to hear. "Colonel Thorn," he taunted. "You have brought brave men to die in my home. A foolish gesture. Just as foolish as the woman who thought she could hide from her past, he knew. He knew she was here. Through her scope, Anya scanned the fortress windows. And then she saw him. On a balcony, surrounded by guards, stood the man who haunted her nightmares. The man who had taken everything from her. Revenge was there, a clear shot, an easy end to 5 years of agony. But as her finger tightened on the trigger, a mortar shell exploded near Deacon's position, sending him flying. He was exposed, wounded, and the enemy was closing in. Her past or her present. Her vengeance or her family. In that split second, the ghost of Elena Voronina made a choice. She swung her rifle away from Cerberus and onto the mortar team. Breath. Squeeze. Recoil. 315. Breath. Squeeze. Recoil. 316. She created a path. She laid down a curtain of fire that forced the enemy back, giving Thorn the opening he needed. Fall back, he commanded. To the extraction point. Ghost, cover us. Anya provided that cover. She became a whirlwind of precision violence, her shots coming faster and faster, a rhythmic drumbeat of salvation for the men below. She took out RPG teams, suppressed machine gunners, and picked off advancing infantry. But she was a lone target, and they finally found her. A sniper's round, fired from the fortress, slammed into the rock beside her head, showering her with stone fragments. Another tore through her shoulder, a searing, white-hot agony that sent her reeling. Her scope shattered. Blood poured down her arm. She was wounded, half-blind, but she was not broken. She propped herself against the rock, drew her sidearm, and continued to fire, a defiant last stand against the darkness. As the roar of the extraction helicopter filled the air, Thorn looked back one last time at the mountain. He saw the faint, sporadic flashes of her pistol, a lone star fighting against an overwhelming night. "Don't you leave her!" Deacon roared, his voice raw with pain and loyalty. Thorn never intended to. The return to base was a grim, silent affair. Of the 12 men who went in, only 5 came back. Deacon was stable, but badly wounded. Anya was unconscious, rushed into surgery, the bullet from her shoulder a testament to her sacrifice. Colonel Thorn, his face a mask of cold fury, walked directly from the debriefing into the command center where Major Evans was busy crafting a report that would paint him as a hero. He didn't speak. He simply placed a small, encrypted data drive on the desk in front of Evans and Admiral Vance, who had been overseeing the operation. "That's the unedited comms log from Ghost's helmet cam," Thorn said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Including the part where you denied air support 3 minutes before the enemy's anti-air systems were even active. It also includes the encrypted burst transmission you sent to Cerberus 10 minutes before we breached the wall." Evans's face went pale. The facade of concern and authority crumbled, revealing the craven, ambitious coward beneath. That's doctored evidence," he stammered. Admiral Vance, his face ashen, picked up the drive. He had made a joke at a woman's expense, and that woman had single-handedly saved what was left of a Tier 1 unit while his own hand-picked major had tried to get them all killed. The weight of his misjudgment was crushing. "Major Evans," the Admiral said, his voice trembling with a rage he could barely contain. "You are under arrest." The military police entered, their faces grim. As they hauled a protesting Evans away, Thorn turned to the Admiral. "She saved them," Thorn said, his words a final verdict. "The clerk. The ghost. She saved us all." Days later, Anya woke up in the stark white of a med bay. Her shoulder was a universe of pain, but she was alive. The first thing she saw was Colonel Thorn, sitting in a chair by her bed. He looked older, the lines on his face carved deeper. He didn't offer platitudes or thanks. He simply reached into his pocket and placed a small, circular patch on the blanket beside her hand. It was the Spectre cell insignia. "Deacon's asking for you," Thorn said, his voice rough with emotion. The team, they're waiting. This is your home now, if you want it. Anya looked at the patch, then at the colonel. The hole in her soul, the one that had been ripped open by a car bomb 5 years ago, had not vanished. But it no longer felt like an abyss. It felt like a space that could be filled. She picked up the patch, her fingers closing around the embroidered spectre. She had failed to get her revenge on Cerberus, but she had won something far more valuable, a reason to live. A family to fight for. The final scene is not one of battle, but of quiet purpose. Anya Sharma, no longer a ghost but a legend in her own right, stands before a new group of Spectre Cell recruits. Her arm is in a sling, but her eyes are clear and sharp. She is not teaching them to shoot, she is teaching them to see, to understand that the true strength of a warrior is not in the weapon they carry, but in the family they protect. So I ask you again. What happens when the one they overlooked becomes the one they can't live without? What happens when the quietest voice becomes the battle cry for an entire generation of heroes? True strength is not found in rank or reputation. It is forged in the fires of loss, tempered by sacrifice, and revealed only when everything is on the line. It's the fire in the soul that refuses to be extinguished. Remember that. Like this story, if you believe in the power of resilience, share it with someone who needs to see that heroes come from everywhere, and comment below with a story of a time when the underdog changed everything.